Alright everyone, so with Mafia 4 coming out, I decided for this channel I was going to play through the first 3 Mafia games. Now, I have never played a single Mafia game up until this point. Didn't play 1, didn't play 2, or 3. So for this video, we're going to be talking about Mafia, the definitive edition, and I literally just moments ago finished it. So I have a lot to say, and we're going to put that in this video. Mafia 2 and 3, the same type of video will be coming for each of them. So I want to start, and this is, I think, the best way to start it out, that this was one of the best experiences I had playing a mob game in maybe ever. Right? This might, in my opinion, I haven't played 2 or 3 yet, keep that in mind, this may go down as my favorite mob game ever. And the reason I say that, and the reason I bring that up, is because this game understands how to tell the story of being somebody who is in the mob. And it's funny because nothing that happened throughout the story I was able to predict. You could, obviously, you kind of understood from the beginning, and spoiler warning, if you don't want anything spoiled, please turn off the video now. If you're okay with spoilers, remain. I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers coming. Obviously, you understand that in some way, Tommy, your character, is, turning on family, right? You know that's going to happen because he's sitting there right at the end talking to the police. However, you don't know how that's going to happen, why that's going to happen, and it takes you through the whole story of how you get there. And there's a few things I think this game does great. First of all, the entirety of the setting, the ambiance, everything is perfect, right? I mean, you just feel like you're living in this world. You feel like you're in the mob. Now, I will say that the only thing I would tell you, if you're someone who's wondering whether you should get this game or not, is this is not your style of mob game where you're like, okay, we're going to take down this rival group and we're going to have some type of control. This is a narrative story. There is nothing here besides the story that they're telling. You know, a lot of times there will be, I remember, I forgot what Godfather game it was, but basically you were kind of taking over territory and doing this and doing that. That's not the case here, right? That is not the case. So just thought I would put that in. But the ambiance is perfect. Another thing I felt like is great is the shooting mechanics, because obviously, you know, a lot of games, you know, it's like you're just this, you'll be an average guy who picks up, you know, a gun here, and now you're like expert marksman, right? You're like the best with the firearm. And it's obviously for fun, but at the end of the day, it may not feel realistic. This game, one of the most interesting things about it to me was the whole time I was playing, I couldn't get out of my head how the gunplay felt good. It wasn't frustrating. I didn't feel like, oh man, this is terrible. But I also felt like it would be someone who's, okay, he could shoot a gun, but he's not, you know, this isn't, you know, someone on SEAL Team 6. And I felt like that was such a good way of being able to tell a mobster's, like, this is how it would feel to be a mobster. I thought that was another thing that was so perfect. The next, the connection you have with each character. There are multiple characters in this game that you have a pretty good connection with, and that keeps you throughout the whole story. Obviously, with, in this game, the wife Sarah, right, that becomes the driving connection to where things go. I thought it was interesting. There was a guy, Ralphie, who works in the shop, who has a stutter, and Paulie's kind of mean to him, but you're, throughout the whole thing, very nice to him the whole time. And first of all, I loved the fact that we were. It made me feel real good seeing that. But also, I found it interesting because at the end of the game, and here's another spoiler, at the end of the game, he's one of the guys that, because you turn, ends up going to jail. You turn on Ralphie. And to me, when I saw Ralphie, because at the end, the mob boss, you know, I really disliked him, and we'll get into, you know, the reasons for that. But Ralphie, you know, he was just another guy there. And so to turn on him, it shows you, and it made you feel the weight of what was happening, right? The weight of the turn that was going on.
He's still alive.
That's basically for the, you know, like the connections. You can't get much better than that. Having a connection. Even the moment when you actually kill the rival mob boss. It's kind of interesting because this whole game you're fighting against this rival mob boss, right? For, actually, I shouldn't say for the whole game, for maybe 65% of it, And then what happens is, as the success of your own family grows and grows and grows and grows, now it becomes more of an internal thing. And the twists and turns that you get at the end, like I said, I didn't see any of them coming. I thought for sure Paulie was going to be the guy that turns on you at some point. I thought he was going to turn on you over the money or something like that. None of that ended up happening. And so in that sense, that's, in my opinion, all the more reason that this game is awesome, because I wasn't sitting there like, oh, I know what's going to happen next. I know what's going to happen next. The only thing I knew is what they wanted you to know, which was at some point you're going to tell, you're going to turn on the family here, right? Basically, the only downside to this game, I would say, because there was this feature where you could get in a car and you could, as long as there wasn't a key part of the mission, you could literally just, fast travel right to the mission. And that was perfect because it kept the narrative going. It kept you in the story. It didn't take you out of the story. It didn't make you, be like, oh, God, okay, I got to drive here. Got to do this. It helped me it was like I was playing a game, but like an interactive movie in a sense, which I thought was awesome. The only downside, I think, at all, if I had to find a downside to this game, is number one, there is no freedom, right? And it's kind of weird because I can see both arguments, but the fact that one thing I couldn't help during this whole thing was that I felt like I had almost no control over anything that was going on, right? You were battling a rival mob boss, you were battling all these guys, but there was no like secondary thing you could do. There was no like, oh, maybe try this instead of this. It was pretty straightforward, which, like I said, is good and it's bad. I think it's good because the story they told, it kept you in the air. A lot of these open world games, they overwhelm you with stuff to do. So because of that, you're kind of in the story, but not in the story. You're doing these side things that don't necessarily matter. This game basically says none of that stuff matters. We're just going to keep you in the story. But when you are part of like, a family like this, right? Part of the mob family, you do kind of, you just felt like you were sitting there like, oh, there's really no, I have no say. I have no say. I have no say in anything, And to be fair, maybe that's how it would feel if you're not the mob boss in one of these families, right? If you're just one of these henchmen. But I just wanted to say that is maybe one downside to it. But before we are done with this video, I want to point out to me what was the number one part of this game, and that is its portrayal of somebody in the mob. A lot of times, especially in video games, right, because it's literally like a fantasy world, they'll take something and they'll give you the best version of it, right? So they'll take something and they'll say, this is the best kind of version of something. This game does not do that. What they do is they take, to me, and give an accurate portrayal of what the mob is like, right? This isn't a story about all this loyalty amongst, people in the mafia and how they're doing things, but they're really not bad. No, this is a story of somebody who started out as a taxi driver, right? He's just driving a taxi, and then unfortunate circumstances get him brought into the mob. And throughout his time, you see backstabbing and backstabbing and backstabbing. You see the brutal nature in which enemies are handled with. You see how quickly, just on a dime, somebody will be turned on. And you see through it your character, because I was rooting for my character throughout the whole thing, but then something happens and you're like, oh, wow, that was actually a really, rob a bank. That's really, really bad, right? That's terrible. So all of those things I felt were, I've never seen a game do it quite this way, where, and it really is how it goes, meaning one moment he's in the taxi, the next moment he's just a part of the family doing this and that, and then before you know it, you're in deep doing all these things, and there's no way out, right? The only way out is basically, as we saw, and then I was shocked. You turn obviously on the family, you end up in jail, you come out, and it's this nice ending of you with your wife, your kids, your family, and then the ending is you getting killed and your family's all right there, right? So the story ends with you were loyal, you saved your family from what could have happened, and it's a sad ending. I mean, it's a sad ending because it's everybody. Paulie obviously gets killed. It's a good ending, and then it's a sad ending, right? If it stops right at what was that wedding ceremony, there'd be no problem. But then, of course, it ends with you getting killed, and that's the sad part of it. So I have no clue what Mafia 2 is going to bring. I don't know if it follows the story, if it's a whole new story. But I will say that this game, if you have not, if you're a mob game enthusiast, if you're a fan of like these kind of narrative games that are like I said, and I've only known that I think the second is closer to this, and then the third is more open world. So after that, maybe we'll do another fourth video kind of comparing all of them. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.